All right, you guys, so completing the square. I think this is going to be our last notes for quadratic equations. So this is another way, just like the quadratic formula, it's another way to solve a quadratic equation. Sorry, that's kind of terrible writing over there. Solve a quadratic equation that you cannot factor. Just like the quadratic formula. But it's a lot easier to use, I think, maybe if you don't have a calculator, or if you want to turn it into vertex form. So let's put that down there too. So two reasons. One, we're going to do this in order to solve something that you cannot factor. Or two, to turn an equation into vertex form. So you can find the max and min, right? And they use this a lot in business because they want to maximize the profits, right? So that if you want to know what's going to maximize your profits for business, they're going to want to use this formula. So I hope you wrote that down because I'm actually going to erase it so that we have more room. So you can always rewind and go back and find it. Erase it. All right, so let's work on our example and then we'll go back through our steps, right? Or you can pause and write down the steps you're doing at any time. It might be good practice to write down your steps and see if they match what we talk about for taking notes. I don't know if many teachers are going to be as good about making sure the notes get written down right, and then in college you're going to need note-taking skills like to the nth degree, you guys. So let's take just an equation, and why don't we start with number 1 from our practice problem sheet on the side that is completing the square. Okay, and this one, it's not, oh, it looks like this one is general form. Now, you don't have to put it into general form to do this one like you do quadratics, but let's just see what happens. So p squared plus 14p minus 38 equals 0. There's actually two different ways to do this. The first way is we take this negative 38 and we move it to the other side. So let's do that. So that we only have the first term and the second term on one side. Okay, so we're going to add 38 and add 38. Okay, so if you want to write down that step for step 1, we get the c term to the other side, right? So then we have p squared plus 14p equals 38. Okay, now this is important. I left this little space here because we're going to put something there. And what we're going to put here is this is still a b term, right? So over here on the side, I'm going to put a little star, right? Or maybe in your steps, so we'll remember to write this down in our steps. But take half of b and square it. Okay, so half is 14 is 7, and we want to square it, and we get 49. Okay, and we're going to put that 49, and it's positive, right here. Okay, so then we're going to add that answer, 49, okay, to one side. Okay, and what you do to one side, and I hope you said have to do to the other. Okay, so if we add 49 here, then we have to add 49 here. All right, so let's rewrite. Now we have p squared plus 14p plus 49 equals, what's 38 plus 49? 8 and 9 is 17. Carrier 1, 7, 8, 87. Okay, now up here, can you guys write? You're not going to remember. Hopefully you have this in your notes still. We're looking for vertex form because remember one of the things we're doing here is we can use it to turn into vertex form. So at the end of this, we want to have vertex form that we will solve. And vertex form is y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. So, and our y is going to be 0 equals, and then this will be all on the other side. So the last, not the last step. What I want to do next, we have one more step here. We need to turn this into this here, okay? That's easy. We find what was half of 14, that was 7. So, and it was positive 7. So we have p minus 7 squared. Now, what happens if we have p minus 7 squared? Let's just do this over here, and then I'm going to erase it. I just want you guys to see, okay? If we take p minus 7 times p minus 7, and we do our little lattice, area, square, box, whatever you want to call it, you get p squared here, p squared, negative 7p. Oops, it should be plus. Why did I put negative? How many of you guys have been screaming here? Half of 14 was positive 7. Positive 7. Oh, I hope you watched this before you told me I got it wrong. I fixed it. So plus 7p, plus 7p, and then positive 49. So if I rewrote this and combined those p's, I get p squared plus 14p plus 49. So this is the same thing as this. It just looks different, okay? Now equals 87. Now, to get this equal to 0, right, we want this to be 0, so it looks like this, right? 0 equals. And then, why don't I color code this here? That this trinomial is the same as this perfect square. Okay, those two are the same. Now I need to make that 87 0. How do I do that? I hope you said subtract 87 from both sides. Okay, and I can't subtract 87 from anything in here. So what that looks like is p plus 7 squared minus 87 equals 0. This is now in vertex form. What number's out here that I can't see? It's 1. My A is 1, right? And what's my vertex? What's my vertex? My vertex equals, and remember, this vertex is minus, let me make this a color. The vertex is minus h, right? What do I have here? I have plus 7. The only way to get plus 7 from a minus is minus a negative. So the vertex is negative 7 for my x, right? And negative 87 for my y, okay? That's the vertex. But I have not finished solving this, so I'm going to erase some things here so I have more room. how do I finish solving it? I need to solve what letter here makes this equal to 0. That's what I still have to figure out, right? So you guys are going to hate me, but we're going to go back up to before we subtracted the 87 from each side. So at this point, p plus 7, p plus, I better make that better, plus 7 squared equals 87. Okay, I'm going to solve it from here. What is the inverse of a square? Is taking the square root. So if I take the square root of both sides, I have p plus 7 equals, oh, this is going to kill you guys, plus or minus the square root of 87. Why is that plus or minus the square root of 87? That's because, take a look up here. Let's do a little review work up here. What is the square root of 4? If you said the square root of 4 is 2, you are half correct. That is one answer because 2 times 2 is 4, positive 4, that's perfect. But, and I think we have gone over this before this year, this is only half the answer because also the square root of 4 is equal to negative 2 because negative 2 times negative 2 is also positive 4. So 87 doesn't have a perfect square. I know 9 times 9 is 81. And I know 10 times 10 is 100, right? But there's nothing in between 9 and 10 that gives me 87. There's no perfect square. So what that means is I'm just going to leave it as the square root of 87. But I do know that there's two answers, a positive answer and a negative answer. So it stays positive and negative. Just like the quadratic formula, it stays that way because we're going to have two answers to this quadratic, right? So the last step is just to subtract 7 from each side. So here's our two answers. X sub 1 is equal to positive the square root of 87 minus 7. And x sub 2 is negative square root of 87 minus 7. So you can type that into your calculator, and I hope you remember that when I ask, whenever you do this, if I don't have an exact, and let's open the calculator here. If I don't have an exact answer, the default is to round to the hundredths, so that's what we're going to do here. So I'm going to do positive square root 87, so second square root 87. I don't actually need the positive sign, right? And then that 87 has to be in parentheses, minus 7. That's one answer. And that's approximately 2.33. So x1 is approximately, 2.33. X sub 2 is, and here's a trick, you guys, I can make it disappear. That's not the trick I was looking for. If you do second enter, it brings back what you did. And all I have to do is I have to go to the front and I have to second insert a negative 16.33. So it's approximately negative 16.33. You could leave it as, this all could be the follow me over here to this blank spot over here. I'm going to erase something. But you can write this anywhere. You don't have to write it. In fact, don't write it under the steps. We are saving this information for when we write down our steps in order. But I think we'll have to do another example. But while I have this open space, I'll do this. You can absolutely leave the answer as x equals plus or minus the square root of 87 minus 7. That means two different answers.